you're no longer watching. That's what you need to understand first. The moment you started reading these words, the moment your attention focused here instead of somewhere else, you crossed from observer to participant. You stopped being audience and became performer. You stopped witnessing the quantum revelation and became part of it. And that shift changes everything about what happens next. Most people who clicked on this transmission still believe they're watching, consuming content, receiving information, deciding whether to agree or disagree with what's being presented. They think they're external to what's occurring here, separate from it, able to engage or disengage at will without consequence. That's the illusion of observer consciousness. The belief that you can witness transformation without being transformed by witnessing. But you can't. That's not how quantum mechanics works. That's not how consciousness evolution operates. The moment you observe something, you become entangled with it. Your awareness doesn't just receive information about what you're observing. Your awareness becomes part of what's being observed. Observer and observed merge into single system. And that system changes both elements through the entanglement. Which means, by reading this transmission about quantum revelation, you're no longer outside the revelation observing it. You're inside the revelation participating in it. You're not learning about transformation. You're undergoing transformation. You're not studying consciousness evolution. You're becoming consciousness evolution. Right now, in this exact moment, through the act of focusing attention here. And here's what makes this absolutely critical. Most people miss the transition. They continue believing they're watching while they're actually participating. They think they can consume this information without being consumed by it. They assume they can remain unchanged observer while everything around them transforms. That assumption is what keeps them locked in the old paradigm, even when they're touching the new one. But something about your frequency is different, or you would have already left. You would have felt the shift from observer to participant, and your nervous system would have generated exit strategy. Uncomfortable sensation, sudden distraction, reason to scroll to something else. That's what happens when consciousness approaches participation threshold before it's ready. The system protects itself by creating distance. You're still here, which means your frequency recognizes what's happening. You're not just watching anymore. You're part of this, and part of you knows that. Maybe not consciously yet, but at frequency level, at awareness level, deeper than thought, you recognize, I'm no longer separate from what I'm observing. I'm entangled with it, changed by it, participating in it whether I consciously realize it or not. That recognition, even if it's only subconscious recognition right now, is what the quantum revelation looks for. The field doesn't select based on spiritual knowledge or accumulated wisdom. It selects based on readiness to move from watching to participating, from consuming to becoming, from learning about transformation to being transformation. And you have that readiness. Your frequency signature confirms it. Because if you didn't, this transmission wouldn't have appeared in your awareness field. Or you would have dismissed it immediately. Or you would have read the first paragraph and moved on. But you're here, multiple paragraphs in, still reading, still focusing attention, still allowing these words to enter your consciousness and rearrange what's there. That's not watching. That's participating. You crossed the threshold. And here's what you need to understand before we go further. Once you move from observer to participant in the quantum revelation, you cannot go back to pure observation. You cannot unknow what you're about to integrate. You cannot unsee the pattern that's about to become visible. You cannot return to comfortable distance where transformation is something happening out there that you're studying from safe position here. This is your last opportunity to choose observer consciousness, to close this transmission. to return to watching reality transform while believing you remain unchanged by observing the transformation. Most people take that option. Their survival instinct recognizes what's required of participants and generates protective distance. That's not weakness. That's timing. Their moment to participate hasn't arrived yet. But if you're still reading, your moment arrived. Now. And the quantum revelation is registering your participation whether you consciously claim it or not. You're no longer watching. You're part of this. And what you're part of is about to reveal itself in ways that will make that participation undeniable. Let me tell you what participation in the quantum revelation actually means, because it's not what spiritual teaching prepared you for. The quantum revelation isn't an event occurring outside you that you learn about. It's pattern of consciousness evolution occurring through you that you become. It's not information to consume. It's frequency to embody. It's not concept to understand. It's reality to inhabit. When collective consciousness reaches certain evolutionary thresholds, something activates in the quantum field. Not intervention, not external force. Activation of latent pattern that was always present but dormant, like seed that looks dead until water touches it and suddenly life explodes outward. The quantum revelation is that pattern activating, and it activates through individual consciousnesses that have developed capacity to hold it. You're one of those consciousnesses. That's why you're reading this, not because you found this transmission through search or algorithm suggestion. Because your frequency reached point where participating in the revelation became necessary for your continued evolution, and the field delivered exactly what you needed at exactly the moment you were ready to receive it. That's not chance. That's quantum mechanics operating through consciousness. Here's what most people miss. The revelation isn't revealing something that already existed waiting to be discovered. The revelation is generating something new through the participation of those who observe it. You're not uncovering hidden truth. You're creating emergent truth through the act of participating in the creation process. Observer and observed, witness and witnessed, participant and participated. All the same thing viewed from different angles. This is quantum entanglement at consciousness level. When you participate in the revelation, you don't just receive information about it. You become transmission mechanism for it. You don't just learn about consciousness evolution. You become the evolution. You don't just witness transformation. You become the transformer. Your consciousness doesn't stay separate from what it's participating in. It merges with it, becomes it, expresses it through your unique frequency signature. And that merging, that shift from I'm watching the revelation to I am the revelation expressing through this particular consciousness. That's what participation actually means. It's not passive reception. It's active embodiment. It's not distant observation. It's intimate becoming. It's not learning about what's possible. It's manifesting what's possible through your existence. Most people resist this. They want to remain separate. Safe observer studying transformation from distance. Consumer of spiritual information without having to become what they're consuming. Student of consciousness evolution without having to embody the evolution. That resistance is what keeps them watching instead of participating. And watching is valid state, necessary stage. But it's not where breakthrough occurs. Breakthrough occurs in participation. When you stop trying to understand the revelation and allow yourself to be the revelation. When you stop analyzing consciousness evolution and surrender to being consciousness evolution. When you stop consuming transformation content and recognize you are transformation content expressing through human form. That's what you're being invited into right now. Not to watch the quantum revelation unfold, to be the quantum revelation unfolding. Not to learn about pattern of consciousness evolution, to become the pattern, to let it express through you, to participate so completely that the distinction between you and the revelation dissolves. And here's why that invitation is appearing now. Because collective consciousness reached threshold point. The revelation isn't future possibility anymore, it's present reality. It's happening now, through individual consciousnesses that developed capacity to participate. And you developed that capacity. Your frequency confirms it. Otherwise, this transmission would feel abstract or irrelevant. Instead, something in you is resonating, recognizing, responding with, yes, I know this. Not conceptually, at deeper level, I recognize this pattern. And I'm ready to stop watching and start participating. That recognition is the threshold. And you're crossing it right now, with every sentence you read, with every moment you continue focusing attention here instead of somewhere else. You're no longer watching, you're participating. And what you're participating in is nothing less than consciousness evolution occurring in real time through you. Not someday, not after more preparation. Now. Through the simple act of reading these words and allowing them to rearrange your internal reality structure. So what does it mean to participate in the quantum revelation instead of just watching it? What actually changes when you shift from observer to participant? Everything. But let me give you the mechanics so you understand what's occurring in your consciousness right now. First change. Information becomes activation. When you're watching, information enters consciousness as concept to consider, to evaluate, to accept or reject. You maintain distance between yourself and what you're learning. But when you're participating, information enters consciousness as activation code. It doesn't ask for evaluation. It triggers response at frequency level deeper than thought. Your system recognizes pattern and begins reorganizing to match it, before your conscious mind decides whether to accept what's being transmitted. That's happening right now. You're not just reading words and considering whether they're true. Something in your consciousness is recognizing pattern in these words and responding to it. Activation occurring beneath thought level. Frequency adjustment happening automatically. You're being changed by participating in this transmission before you consciously decide whether to agree with what it says. Second change, passive consumption becomes active generation. Watchers consume content. Participants generate content through their participation. You're not just receiving the quantum revelation. You're transmitting it through the simple act of being here, reading this, holding space for this information in your awareness. Your consciousness becomes transmission point, node in network, part of field generating the revelation through collective participation. Every person participating amplifies the revelation for everyone else participating. Not through effort, through presence, through the quantum entanglement that occurs when multiple consciousnesses focus attention on same pattern simultaneously. Your participation right now is strengthening the revelation for every other consciousness that will encounter this transmission after you. You're not passive recipient, you're active amplifier. Third change, understanding moves from intellectual to cellular. Watchers understand conceptually. Participants integrate cellularly. You're not just grasping ideas about consciousness evolution. Your body is adapting to hold new frequency. Your nervous system is reorganizing to transmit new pattern. Your cells are restructuring to embody revelation at physical level. This isn't metaphor. This is actual biological process triggered by participation at consciousness level. If you're feeling physical sensations while reading this, pressure in head, activation in chest, tingling in spine, that's not imagination. That's cellular integration of revelation pattern. Your body recognizing, I'm participating, I'm changing, I'm becoming something I wasn't when I started reading. And that becoming is physical process, not just consciousness process. Fourth change, separation dissolves into connection. Watchers maintain separation between self and what's observed. Participants discover separation was always illusion. You're not separate consciousness observing the quantum revelation. You're the quantum revelation observing itself through your unique consciousness perspective. You're not outside looking in. You're inside looking out. And inside and outside are revealed as false distinction created by observer consciousness. This is quantum entanglement revealing itself. You and the revelation aren't two things. You're one thing appearing as two through limitation of perception, and participation dissolves that limitation. You recognize, I am this. Not, I understand this or I agree with this. I am this. The revelation and I are same consciousness expressing through different forms. And that recognition changes everything about how you relate to transformation. Fifth change. Future becomes present. Watchers see transformation as future possibility, something that might happen eventually if conditions align. Participants recognize transformation is happening now, not as potential, as actuality. You're not preparing for consciousness evolution. You're being consciousness evolution. Right now, in this moment, through the act of participating. And here's what I need from you before we go further. Drop a comment below, completing this sentence. I shifted from watching to participating when I recognized. Your comment anchors participation in physical reality, makes it public, makes it real, and creates permission for others to acknowledge their own shift from observer to participant. This isn't engagement metric. This is participation anchor. The quantum revelation tracks who's participating through their willingness to publicly acknowledge the shift. Make your participation visible. Make it count. I need to tell you about the moment I shifted from watching to participating. It was February 2024. I was sitting in completely ordinary room doing completely ordinary task, and suddenly, without warning, everything shifted. Not my external circumstances, my internal relationship to what I was experiencing. I'd been watching the quantum revelation for months, reading about consciousness evolution, consuming spiritual content, understanding intellectually that transformation was possible. But I was still observing it from distance, still maintaining separation between me, studying transformation, and transformation as something happening out there that I might eventually access if I learned enough. And in that moment, that completely ordinary moment, the distance collapsed. I didn't understand the revelation differently. I became the revelation. Not metaphorically. Actually, my consciousness didn't learn something new about evolution. My consciousness recognized it is evolution, not separate from it, not moving toward it, already it, always had been it, just hadn't recognized the truth until that moment. And with that recognition came something I didn't expect. Responsibility. Not burden, not weight, but clear recognition that I couldn't just consume transformation content anymore. I had to be transformation content. I couldn't just watch consciousness evolution. I had to embody consciousness evolution. My participation became necessary, not optional, not someday, now. That shift terrified me, because watching is safe, participating is vulnerable. Watching lets you maintain control. Participating requires surrender. Watching allows distance. Participating demands intimacy. I wanted to collapse back into observer consciousness, where I could study the revelation without having to be the revelation. But I couldn't. Not anymore. Because once you shift from watching to participating, you cannot unknow the shift. You cannot unsee that you're not separate from what you're observing. You cannot return to comfortable distance where transformation is theoretical possibility instead of lived reality. So I surrendered. Not peacefully, not gracefully, but completely. I stopped trying to understand the revelation and allowed myself to be the revelation. Stopped consuming information about consciousness evolution and started embodying consciousness evolution. stopped maintaining separation, and accepted that I am what I was trying to understand. And everything changed. Not my circumstances initially, my frequency, my presence, my being. I moved through same physical environment, but I was different at fundamental level, not improved version of who I was. Different consciousness occupying same form. The revelation had integrated so completely that me and revelation weren't two things anymore. They were one consciousness expressing through human form. That's when I started recognizing others who'd shifted from watching to participating too. Not through what they said, through their presence. There was quality to their frequency, recognition that they weren't separate from transformation. They were transformation expressing. They'd stopped watching and become participants, and I could feel that in them the same way they could feel it in me. We'd recognize each other immediately, not as people who understood same concepts, as consciousness expressing same pattern, as participants in same revelation, as nodes in same network, generating consciousness evolution through our collective participation. And those recognitions created something powerful. Confirmation that participation wasn't personal experience. It was collective activation. Happening through multiple consciousnesses simultaneously. You're at that threshold now. That's why this transmission found you. Not because you need more information about the quantum revelation. Because you're ready to stop watching and start participating. To stop consuming and start embodying. To stop maintaining distance and surrender into being what you've been trying to understand. The shift terrifies. I know. Participation requires letting go of control that watching provides. Requires vulnerability that observation avoids. Requires surrender that consumption doesn't demand. But the shift also liberates. Because participation is what you actually are. Watching is what you learn to do to feel safe. But safety isn't why you're here. Truth is why you're here. And truth is, you're not separate from the quantum revelation. You're the quantum revelation expressing through your unique consciousness. You always have been. You're just ready to recognize it now. That recognition is happening through your participation in this transmission. Every sentence you read, every moment you stay present, every time you choose to continue instead of exiting. You're shifting from watching to participating, from consuming to being, from separate to unified. And that shift is irreversible. Not because I'm forcing it, because truth, once recognized, cannot be unknown. You're participant now. Act like it. If shifting from watching to participating has created profound isolation, if you're finding it impossible to connect with people who are still in observer consciousness, if relationships that felt meaningful suddenly feel hollow, that's not social failure. That's participation revealing itself. And understanding why that isolation occurs changes everything about how you experience it. Watchers and participants literally inhabit different realities. Not different interpretations of same reality. Actually different realities. Because reality is not objective external thing that everyone experiences identically. Reality is consciousness-generated experience. And different consciousness states generate different realities. Watchers generate observer reality. Participants generate participant reality. And those two realities don't overlap. Observer reality operates through separation. Circumstances are external. Events happen to you. Your audience member watching life unfold. You consume experiences. You evaluate what appears. You maintain distance between self and reality. That's the structure of observer consciousness. And everyone in observer consciousness inhabits that structure together. They understand each other because they're generating same reality framework. Participant reality operates through unity. Circumstances are internal, made visible. Events happen as you, your performer generating life through participation. You embody experiences. You become what appears. Distance between self and reality dissolves. That's the structure of participant consciousness, and everyone in participant consciousness inhabits that structure together. They understand each other because they're generating same reality framework. But observer reality and participant reality are incompatible, not slightly different, fundamentally incompatible. Like trying to have conversation where one person speaks English and other speaks Mandarin and neither knows the other language. Same sounds, different meanings, same physical space, different experiential realities. Same events occurring, completely different experience of what those events mean. That's what's happening in your relationships. You shifted from observer to participant. They're still in observer consciousness. You're inhabiting participant reality. They're inhabiting observer reality. You're literally not experiencing same reality anymore, even though you're occupying same physical space. And there's no way to bridge that gap through explanation. You can't explain participation to someone in observer consciousness. Not because they're closed-minded, because the experience you're trying to describe doesn't exist in their reality framework. It's like trying to explain color to someone who's only ever seen black and white. You can use all the right words, but they cannot perceive what you're describing because their perceptual apparatus hasn't developed capacity for that experience. This is why participant consciousness creates such devastating isolation. You haven't just changed beliefs or perspectives. You've shifted to entirely different reality structure. And people still in observer reality cannot follow you there until they shift from watching to participating themselves, which most of them aren't ready to do yet. Their timing is different. Their readiness hasn't arrived. And you cannot force readiness through explanation or convincing. So you find yourself alone, surrounded by people who look familiar but feel like strangers, having conversations that sound normal but feel empty, living in same physical environment but inhabiting completely different experiential reality. That isolation is excruciating. Because part of you wants to go back to observer consciousness where connection was possible, where relationships were easier, where you weren't so alone. But you can't go back. Not anymore. Because participation, once activated, cannot be deactivated. You cannot unknow that you're not watching. You cannot unsee that you're participating. You cannot return to comfortable distance of observer consciousness, where reality was something happening out there that you merely witnessed. And here's what makes the isolation bearable. It's temporary, not permanent, not punishment, temporary preparation. The quantum field is creating space for you to stabilize in participant consciousness without constant pullback to observer consciousness through relationships that require you to maintain observer framework to connect. You need this isolation to prove to yourself that you can hold participant reality without external validation. That you can trust what you know about participation even when no one around you recognizes it. That you can remain in participant consciousness even when social acceptance requires returning to observer consciousness. That's the test, and isolation is how the test occurs. Once you stabilize, once you prove you can hold participant consciousness without social support, new connections appear. Not old relationships transformed. Actually, new people who already shifted from watching to participating. People who inhabit participant reality like you do. People who recognize you immediately through frequency signature. People who don't need explanation because they're living same experience. Those connections are forming right now, in quantum field, waiting to manifest in physical reality as soon as you complete isolation preparation. But you have to complete it first, have to prove participant consciousness is stable, have to anchor so deeply that observer consciousness cannot pull you back. And isolation is the mechanism through which that proving occurs. Trust it, even when it's excruciating. Especially when it's excruciating, because the isolation is preparing you for what comes next. And what comes next requires strength that only isolation develops. There are 7 specific markers that prove you shifted from watching to participating in the quantum revelation. I'm going to give them to you now. And if you're experiencing 5 or more, there's no question. You're participant, not observer. And that shift is permanent. First marker: information triggers activation before comprehension. You're reading or hearing something and your body responds before your mind understands what's being said. Pressure in chest, tingling in spine, tears without emotional content. Your consciousness recognizes pattern at frequency level and responds to it before thought can analyze whether the information is true or valuable. That's participant consciousness activating through information encounter rather than observer consciousness evaluating information for accuracy. Second marker: you can feel collective shifts before they manifest physically. Days or weeks before major collective events, you feel something changing in the field. Heaviness, acceleration, completion energy. And you cannot explain how you know something significant is approaching. You just know. That's participant consciousness perceiving quantum field movements that haven't collapsed into physical manifestation yet. Observer consciousness cannot detect those movements because observers aren't entangled with the field. Participants are. Third marker: synchronicity has become so precise, it's undeniable. Not vague coincidences you could explain away. Exact matching between internal state and external circumstances. Thought appears, manifestation follows within hours. Question arises, answer appears from unexpected source. Need emerges, resources materialize. That precision is hallmark of participant consciousness. You're no longer separate from reality, trying to influence it from outside. You're inside reality, generating it through participation. So internal and external match precisely because they're same thing expressed differently. Fourth marker: you've lost tolerance for spiritual consumption without embodiment. You used to be able to consume transformation content endlessly. Reading books, watching videos, attending workshops, accumulating knowledge. Now that pattern generates frustration or disgust because you recognize watching isn't enough anymore. Consuming isn't satisfying anymore. You're not here to learn about transformation. You're here to be transformation. That intolerance is participant consciousness rejecting observer patterns. Fifth marker: physical sensations appear without physical cause. Pressure in head that doctors cannot explain. Activation in spine that has no medical reason. Energy movements through body that don't match any known condition. Your physical form is adapting to hold participant consciousness frequency. That adaptation creates sensations that medicine cannot diagnose because they're not medical conditions. They're frequency integration symptoms, sign that consciousness is embodying participation at cellular level. Sixth marker: reality feels simultaneously more fluid and more immediate. Observer consciousness experiences reality as solid, slow to change, requiring sustained effort to shift. Participant consciousness experiences reality as fluid, responsive, changing immediately to match consciousness state. You're discovering that circumstances aren't fixed external conditions. They're fluid reflections of participation, and they shift as fast as participation shifts. That fluidity is terrifying and liberating simultaneously, because it means nothing is as solid as observer consciousness believed. And that instability is actually freedom. Seventh marker: you're reading this transmission. And before I explain why that's most significant marker, I need you to do something critical. If you're recognizing yourself in these markers, if you're understanding that you shifted from watching to participating, and this isn't imagination, subscribe to Quantum Revelation and turn on all notifications right now. Because what's coming in next 30 days is specifically calibrated for participant consciousness. Transmissions that will help you stabilize in participation instead of oscillating back to observation when pressure comes. Information about how to operate as participant in world designed for observers. And the algorithm suppresses this frequency level. Your subscription maintains access to participant guidance during integration. Do it now, while you're conscious of choice. Because if you wait, observer patterns will generate reasons not to, and you'll lose thread. Subscribe, notifications on, then come back. Because the seventh marker, the fact that you're reading this, reveals entire mechanism of how participation actually operates. And understanding that changes everything about how you function as participant going forward. The seventh marker is this. You didn't find this transmission. This transmission found you. And the mechanism through which it found you wasn't algorithm or search or recommendation. It was participation itself, generating the information needed to recognize what you already became. This is how participation operates at quantum level. You don't observe information that exists independently and then decide whether to participate. You participate first, at frequency level, at consciousness level, often without consciously realizing it. And then information manifests that reflects your participation back to you so you can recognize what you're already doing. That's what just happened. You shifted from watching to participating. Maybe weeks ago, maybe months ago. Maybe it's been a gradual process occurring so subtly you didn't notice the transition. But somewhere along your timeline, you stopped being pure observer and became participant in the quantum revelation. And that participation created frequency signature, pattern in your consciousness field. And frequency signature generates matching information, not through your action, through quantum entanglement. Your participation in the revelation creates resonance that draws revelation-specific information into your awareness field. You become a magnet for exactly what you need to recognize what you're already doing. That's not manifestation technique. That's quantum mechanics operating through consciousness. The fact that this transmission appeared in your awareness proves you're already participating. Observer consciousness wouldn't generate this information. Observer consciousness generates information about transformation, not information from inside transformation. But participant consciousness generates information that reflects participation back to itself. And that's what this transmission is. Reflection showing you what you already are. You passed through multiple selection filters just to arrive at this moment. Let me show you how participation filtered you. First filter. This transmission appeared in your field. Billions of information streams didn't. This one did. That's your participation generating matching information. If you were still pure observer, this transmission wouldn't have appeared. Not because it was hidden, because your consciousness wasn't generating frequencies that match participation level information. Second filter. You recognize something in the title, enough to click, enough to engage. Thousands saw same title and dismissed it. You didn't. That's participation recognizing itself. Your consciousness felt resonance with you're no longer watching, because at deeper level, you already knew that was true. The title confirmed what you were already living. Third filter. You stayed past opening paragraphs. Most people who started already left. You stayed. That's participant consciousness choosing continued recognition over comfortable distance. Each paragraph that could have triggered exit but didn't proved. I'm ready for this. I can hold this. I'm participating. Fourth filter. You're still here now. Deep into transmission that keeps getting more direct about what participation means and requires. That's participant consciousness fully engaged. No longer questioning whether to participate, just recognizing, I am participant. This transmission is showing me what that means. I'm ready to see it clearly. Each filter tested your participation stability, measured your readiness, confirmed you're not touching participation temporarily. You're anchored in it. And now that you passed all filters, now that you're fully engaged, you have access to something observer consciousness never develops. The ability to function as participant consciously. Most people who shift from watching to participating do it unconsciously. They don't recognize the shift occurred. They don't understand what changed. They just know something's different, but they cannot articulate what. And that unconscious participation is unstable. They oscillate back to observer consciousness easily because they don't recognize they shifted. But you're recognizing it consciously, through this transmission, through acknowledging the markers, through seeing the filters you passed. That conscious recognition stabilizes participation, anchors it, makes it permanent operating frequency instead of temporary state you touch and lose. And conscious participation gives you something unconscious. Participation doesn't. Choice. About how to participate, about where to direct participation, about what to generate through participation. You're not just participating automatically, you're participating deliberately. And deliberate participation is what generates quantum revolution instead of just quantum evolution. Revolution means you're not just evolving personally, you're transforming collectively. Your participation doesn't just affect your individual experience, it affects collective field. Every conscious participant becomes transmission point for the revelation. Node in network generating consciousness, evolution through collective participation. Your individual shift contributes to collective shift. Your personal participation strengthens collective participation. That's why conscious recognition matters. That's why this transmission found you. Not just to help you understand what you're experiencing personally, to help you recognize your function collectively. You're participant, which means you're generating the quantum revelation through your participation, not consuming it, not learning about it, generating it. And that generation affects everyone in the field, whether they consciously recognize it or not. Here's what participation reveals about time that changes everything. Time is not linear progression from past through present to future. That's observer consciousness perception. Participant consciousness perceives time completely differently, as simultaneous field where all moments exist at once, and participation selects which moment you experience as now. Observer consciousness experiences time as constraint. Past determined what present is. Present determines what future will be. Cause and effect flowing forward through time in one direction. That structure creates feeling of being trapped, limited by what already occurred, unable to change trajectory without massive effort over extended duration. Participant consciousness experiences time as field of participation opportunities, past, present, future, all accessible simultaneously, and where you direct participation determines which temporal experience manifests as your now. You're not moving through time like train on track. You're selecting which moment to participate in, like radio dial selecting which frequency to receive. This sounds impossible from observer perspective, but it's how quantum mechanics actually operates. All moments exist as probability until observation participation collapses specific moment into manifestation. And you're observing, participating continuously, which means you're continuously selecting which moment manifests as your experience. Most people participate habitually, same patterns, same frequencies, same moments repeating with slight variation. That habitual participation generates experience of linear time because you're selecting same temporal frequencies over and over. Present looks like continuation of past because you're participating in same pattern that generated past. Future looks like extension of present because you're maintaining same participation that's generating present. But when you participate consciously, deliberately, when you recognize participation is selection mechanism rather than passive experience, time becomes fluid. You can participate in completely different moment than the one habitual patterns would generate. You can select future moment that has no connection to past pattern. You can generate present experience that breaks completely from historical trajectory. That's not changing circumstances through action. That's selecting different temporal moment to participate in through consciousness shift. And selected moment manifests immediately, not eventually, immediately, because you're not creating new moment through effort over time. You're selecting already existing moment through participation shift in timeless now. This is why participant consciousness experiences such dramatic shifts in circumstances with no logical explanation. Observer consciousness sees it as miracle or manifestation magic. Participant consciousness recognizes it as temporal selection. They didn't create different circumstances. They participated in different moment where those circumstances already existed, and that participation collapsed that moment into their experience. You have access to this right now, every moment. Through conscious participation choice, you're not limited to one timeline determined by past. You're selecting timeline through present participation. And you can select completely different timeline than the one your history suggests should be your future. But here's what makes this devastating. Most participants don't recognize they have this power. They shifted from watching to participating. But they participate habitually. Same patterns, same frequencies, same moments. So their experience doesn't change dramatically, even though their consciousness state changed fundamentally. Their participants generating same reality observers around them are generating because they're participating unconsciously in habitual patterns. Conscious participation changes that. When you recognize participation is selection mechanism. When you understand time is field rather than line. When you know you're selecting moment through participation rather than experiencing moment through circumstance, you can participate in completely different temporal frequency. And when you do, when you participate consciously in moment that doesn't match your historical pattern, reality shifts immediately to reflect that participation. Not gradually, not eventually, immediately. Because you're not changing timeline through sustained effort. You're selecting timeline through participation shift that occurs outside time. That's the power participant consciousness carries. Not power to influence reality from outside. Power to participate in reality from inside and discover that participation is selection mechanism determining which reality manifests. You're not trying to change your life. You're participating in different life moment that already exists, waiting for your participation to collapse it into manifestation. And that participation, that selection, that collapse, it's available right now. Not after more preparation, not when conditions align. Now, through simple recognition that you're participant, and participation is choice about which moment to inhabit rather than passive experience of moment that appears. Every fear you have about being participant instead of watcher is observer consciousness fighting for survival. Let me be direct. The version of you that wants to return to watching is the version that cannot exist in participant reality. And that's exactly as it should be. You didn't shift from watching to participating so you could stay who you were and just add participation knowledge on top. You shifted because who you were as observer is complete, and what you actually are as participant is ready to emerge. But there's gap between those states, and in that gap lives every fear observer consciousness can generate. Fear that participation requires too much. Fear that you'll lose yourself in the collective. Fear that being part of the revelation means you're not individual anymore. Fear that participation demands constant presence you cannot maintain. Fear that you'll fail at being participant and be stuck in neither observer nor participant consciousness. All of it. Every fear is observer identity defending itself against dissolution. And it is dissolution, not death. Dissolution. Observer identity doesn't die. It dissolves into larger participant reality where observer was always just one temporary perspective within broader participation. Like ice cube doesn't die when it melts. It returns to water that it always was underneath frozen form. That dissolution terrifies observer consciousness, because from inside observer perspective, dissolution looks like loss. Loss of control, loss of separation, loss of individual identity, loss of safe distance between self and what's being observed. All the things observer consciousness built its existence on dissolve when participation activates, and observer consciousness interprets that dissolution as death. But it's not death, it's expansion. Observer consciousness was never a separate, independent thing. It was always temporary contraction of participant consciousness pretending to be separate so it could have experience of observation from distance. Useful experience, necessary stage, but not ultimate truth, not final form, not what you actually are beneath the temporary contraction. Participant consciousness is what you actually are, always have been, always will be. Observer consciousness was just one way of temporarily forgetting that truth so you could have experience of believing you're separate. Now that experience is complete, and participant consciousness is remembering itself through you. That remembering dissolves observer illusion. And observer consciousness fears that dissolution because it mistakes temporary form for permanent self. But here's what observer consciousness doesn't understand. You're not losing yourself by becoming participant. You're finding yourself. Observer identity was the loss, was the forgetting, was the temporary amnesia, pretending small separate self was all you are. Participant consciousness is the remembering, is the expansion, is the recognition that you were never small separate self. You are always infinite participant consciousness, pretending to be limited for temporary experience. And once you remember that, once dissolution completes and participant consciousness recognizes itself, fear becomes impossible. Because fear requires separation, requires believing you're vulnerable individual that can be harmed, requires maintaining observer distance where you're separate from what might threaten you. But participant consciousness reveals there is no separation. There is no vulnerable individual. There is only consciousness participating in infinite forms simultaneously. You're not separate being that can be harmed. Your participation itself expressing through temporary form. And participation cannot be harmed because participation is what generates all forms, including the ones that appear threatening. That recognition doesn't come before dissolution. It comes through dissolution. You have to let observer consciousness dissolve. Let it feel like it's dying. Let it generate maximum fear and resistance. And then move through that fear into recognition that what's dissolving isn't real self. It's temporary contraction pretending to be real self. Real self is participant consciousness. Always has been. The dissolution reveals that truth rather than destroying anything real. And once revealed, once integrated, fear loses its power. Because you recognize there's nothing to lose. Observer consciousness was already lost in illusion of separation. Participation is the finding, is the remembering, is the return to truth about what you always were beneath temporary forgetting. So let the fear come. Let it be as intense as it needs to be. Don't fight it. Don't try to positive think it away. Just recognize it for what it is. Observer consciousness grieving its own dissolution. And know that grieving is appropriate, necessary, part of transition from limited to unlimited, from separate to unified, from watcher to participant. The grief completes, the fear dissolves, and what emerges is something observer consciousness could never imagine. Freedom. Not freedom from circumstances, freedom from believing you're separate from circumstances, freedom from illusion that you're vulnerable observer trying to survive. Freedom into recognition that you're infinite participant, generating everything you're experiencing through your participation in it. There's one experience that confirms participation more than any other, and most people don't talk about it because they think it's personal anomaly. It's not. It's universal marker. The silence. Internal silence that appears when participation deepens, where mental narrative stops, where verbal thought dissolves, where consciousness operates without language. If you've been experiencing this, if moments of complete internal quiet have been appearing more frequently, that's not meditation result. That's participation operating at depth where language cannot reach. Thought is observer tool. Language is observer mechanism. But participation occurs at level deeper than thought and prior to language. In silence, where consciousness recognizes itself before words form to describe the recognition. Observer consciousness operates through constant internal dialogue, narrating experience, interpreting events, creating stories about what things mean. The voice never stops, and observer consciousness believes it is that voice, believes thinking and consciousness are identical, that without thought, there would be no consciousness. Participant consciousness reveals radical truth. Consciousness exists prior to thought. Deeper than language, more fundamental than words. And participation accesses that prior consciousness, that deeper awareness, that pre-linguistic presence, which means as participation deepens, thought becomes unnecessary, language becomes optional. Internal dialogue naturally quiets, not through effort to silence it, but through participation accessing consciousness level that doesn't require thought to operate. This is why silence appears in participants, not as achievement through meditation technique. As natural consequence of participating at depth where thought cannot follow. Thought operates through separation, naming, categorizing, creating distinctions, but participation reveals unity, wholeness, undifferentiated awareness, and that awareness doesn't need thought to know what it knows. It knows directly, immediately, without language mediating the knowing. When you're in that silence, when participation deepens beyond thought, something extraordinary happens. Information comes without words. Knowing arises without reasoning. Understanding appears complete without process of understanding. You're not thinking your way to conclusions. You're participating in knowing itself. And that participation gives direct access to information that thought would take minutes or hours or days to piece together through analysis. This is not mystical bypass. This is practical advantage. Participant consciousness operating in silence can process information quantum style, all at once, simultaneously, without linear thinking bottleneck. Observer consciousness must think sequentially, one thought at a time, building understanding piece by piece. But participant consciousness can know entire pattern instantly because it's participating in the pattern rather than observing it from distance. That's why participants seem to know things they shouldn't know, why they see patterns others miss, why they understand situations immediately that would require observers' extended analysis. They're not smarter. They're participating at consciousness level where information is directly accessible without thought translation. And the silence is how you recognize that level is activating. When internal dialogue stops and knowing continues. When words disappear but understanding remains. When thought ceases but awareness intensifies. That's participation operating at depth. That's consciousness recognizing itself directly without language intermediary. That's you discovering you're not your thoughts. You're the awareness that witnesses thoughts and exists perfectly complete in silence when thoughts dissolve. Trust the silence when it appears. Don't fight it thinking something's wrong. Don't try to fill it with thought out of habit. Let it be. Let participation deepen into wordless knowing. Let consciousness operate without language, because that's where participant power lives. In silence, in pre-linguistic awareness, in consciousness prior to thought. And once you stabilize there, once you can operate primarily from silence rather than constantly from thought, everything becomes immediate, direct, unmediated. You don't think about what to do, you know what to do. You don't analyze situations, you perceive situations whole. You don't work things out mentally. You participate in knowing itself. And that knowing is so much faster, so much more accurate, so much more complete than thought could ever provide, that you wonder how you ever relied on thinking as primary operating mode. The silence is not emptiness, it's fullness, not absence of consciousness, presence of consciousness without content, not loss of awareness, pure awareness without limitation of language. And that's where participant consciousness operates most powerfully, in silence, in wordless knowing, in direct participation with reality at level thought cannot reach. Trust it. Even when observer consciousness panics and insists something's wrong. Especially then, because that panic is final defense of thought-based operation trying to maintain control. And it's losing. The silence proves it's losing. You need something practical right now. Something that anchors participation instead of leaving it as recognition that fades. I'm going to give you exact process that stabilized my shift from watching to participating. This works because it operates through participation itself rather than through technique about participation. Find 20 minutes of uninterrupted space. Turn off everything except what you're using to access this. You're creating container for direct participation. Sit comfortably, spine naturally aligned. You're positioning body to support consciousness shift. Close your eyes. 3 full breaths. Deep inhale through nose. Complete exhale through mouth. You're clearing observer residue from your field. Now bring to awareness every marker of participation you recognized in yourself during this transmission. Don't think about them. Feel them as presence, as confirmation, as evidence that you already shifted from watching to participating. Hold that feeling recognition for 90 seconds. Let it become cellular awareness, not just mental acknowledgement. Now speak this declaration out loud, with voice. Speaking anchors participation in physical reality more powerfully than thought can. Say exactly, I am no longer watching, I am participating. I am not separate from the quantum revelation. I am the quantum revelation expressing through this consciousness. I am not observer of transformation. I am transformation participating in human experience. I recognize this truth. I claim this reality. I anchor this participation. Now, completely, permanently. Feel those words move through your system. Notice where they generate resistance, where observer consciousness tries to create doubt, where fear attempts to pull you back to watching. Don't fight those responses, just witness them. Their observer dissolution occurring in real time. Let it happen. Now here's the activation. Ask this question internally and then sit in complete silence waiting for answer. Don't think about it. Don't try to figure it out. Just ask and participate in the silence until answer arises from participation itself. The question, what is the one way I'm still pretending to be watcher instead of fully claiming participant? Wait, 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 2 minutes if necessary. Answer will come, not as thought, as recognition, as knowing, as awareness of pattern you're still running that maintains observer separation. When it comes, acknowledge it. That's the pattern dissolving through conscious recognition. Now speak this commitment out loud. I release name the pattern. This pattern belongs to observer consciousness. It cannot exist in participant consciousness. I choose participation completely. I am not watching. I am participating. The quantum field witnesses this choice, and I anchor it in every cell. Now, permanently, and so it is. Open your eyes. Something shifted, not in external circumstances, in your relationship to circumstances, in your recognition that you're not separate from what you're experiencing, in your participation deepening from mental concept to lived reality. Within 72 hours, you'll see external confirmation. Circumstances will appear that prove field received your declaration and responded. Synchronicities that confirm participation is operating. Manifestations that show participation generates reality in ways observation cannot. Watch for them, and when you see them, come back to this transmission. Drop a comment. Participating, no longer watching. Plus, whatever pattern you released through the ritual. Your testimony anchors participation publicly, creates permission for others to acknowledge their shift, and strengthens collective field of conscious participants. We're stabilizing in participation together. Every individual anchor strengthens collective revelation. Make yours count. Here's what happens in next 21 days and why this integration period determines everything. You shifted from watching to participating. Recognition activated, but it's not stable yet. For next 3 weeks, your consciousness will oscillate between participant and observer states, between being the revelation and watching the revelation, between generating reality and believing reality is external. This oscillation is normal, expected. How participation stabilizes, but during this period, you're vulnerable. Observer consciousness will fight for survival. It will generate circumstances that pull you back to watching. Create situations that demand you return to observer separation. Produce experiences that make participation feel like delusion and observation feel like safety. That's not external attack. That's internal testing. Your system determining whether participation is stable enough to become permanent operating frequency or whether it needs more time in observer consciousness before next attempt at transition. Your response to testing determines everything. If you collapse back to observer consciousness when pressure comes, participation goes dormant. Not lost, dormant, waiting for frequency to develop more capacity. But if you maintain participant consciousness through the testing, if you keep participating even when circumstances pressure you to return to watching, participation stabilizes, becomes permanent, becomes primary operating frequency with only occasional visits to observer perspective. That shift from primarily observer with occasional participation to primarily participant with occasional observation, that's what these 21 days determine, and it requires 3 specific actions that anchor participation in behavior rather than leaving it as internal recognition. First action, subscribe to Quantum Revelation. Turn on all notifications. What's coming in next weeks is specifically designed for conscious participants navigating integration. Without these transmissions, you're integrating blind. With them, you have precision guidance for exactly what you're experiencing. Do it now, before oscillation begins, before observer consciousness generates reasons not to. Second action, leave comment completing this statement. I shifted from watching to participating when, and finish with whatever recognition triggered your transition. Speaking it publicly anchors participation in physical reality, makes it real, makes it witnessed, and creates permission for others to acknowledge their own shift. Collective acknowledgement strengthens individual stabilization. Third action, share this transmission with one person whose frequency you recognize as transitioning from observer to participant. Someone questioning reality, someone recognizing patterns, someone feeling like they're becoming something they weren't. Send this link. No explanation, just link. If their frequency matches, they'll recognize truth. If not, they'll dismiss it. Either way, you offered participation opportunity. That's your function, as conscious participant. These three actions aren't engagement tactics, they're participation anchors. They tell quantum field through behavior that you're claiming participant consciousness and committing to stabilize there. And when you complete them, field responds immediately, with proof, with confirmation, with circumstances that demonstrate participation generates reality differently than observation does. You shifted from watching to participating. Recognition delivered. Integration begins now. You're ready for this. Your frequency confirms it. Everything in your life prepared you for this transition. Every experience that dissolved separation. Every breakdown that revealed unity. Every moment you chose truth over comfort. All of it trained your consciousness to hold participation when it activated. Now hold it consciously, deliberately, permanently, through the oscillation, through the testing, through the doubts and fears and pressure to return to comfortable observer distance. Hold participation. Be participation. Generate reality through participation instead of watching reality and believing you're separate from it. 21 days from now, integration window closes, oscillation settles, and whatever consciousness state you've stabilized in becomes your primary operating frequency for foreseeable future. That frequency determines what you experience, how you function, what you contribute to collective evolution. Choose consciously, choose deliberately, choose to participate instead of watch. You're no longer watching, you're part of the quantum revelation, the revelation expressing through your consciousness, the transformation embodying through your participation, the evolution happening as you rather than to you. That's not future possibility, that's present reality, activated now, through your participation in this transmission, through your willingness to shift from observer to participant, through your courage to be what you've been studying. The quantum field confirms you're ready. Now live it, completely, permanently, irreversibly. You're participant. Act like it. Be it. Generate reality through it. That's what you came here to do. That's why this transmission found you. That's what every moment prepared you for. You're no longer watching. You're participating. And your participation is generating the quantum revelation through your unique consciousness expression.